Hi everyone, welcome back. I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about what causes borderline personality disorder. And I think there are a lot of different hypotheses about what causes not only borderline personality disorder, but every personality disorder. But for the purposes of this video, which is going to be in two parts, we're going to talk about what we think causes borderline personality disorder. And since I study dialectical behavior therapy and I'm a big believer in Dr. Linehan's theories and hypotheses, we're going to talk about her hypothesis of what creates sort of like what combines the perfect storm to create borderline personality disorder or emotion dysregulation in individuals. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, I know that you have heard me talk about attachment trauma, and I have said a couple times, maybe more, that borderline personality disorder is born of attachment trauma. So when I am saying that, what I mean is that oftentimes people who become emotionally dysregulated in adolescence and adulthood, and people who are dysregulated throughout their adulthood, have often been in invalidating environments or often have not been appropriately validated or mirrored or have had the right behavior modeled for them by their primary attachment figures. So most often that's going to be our parents who, as we all know, most parents, not all of them, try their best. But they are the first people that we know and that are modeling behavior for us. So it may be our parents. However, we have other primary attachment figures as children. We have teachers, we have siblings, we have friends, we have extended family. So an invalidating environment in the dialectical behavior therapy world isn't just going to be, oh, you had these horrible parents and now your life is ruined because your parents were horrible. What we're looking for are environments where your feelings were not validated or mirrored, or you were made to feel that they were wrong. And environments like that are considered invalidating because what happens when someone is exposed to environments like that repeatedly is that they don't learn how to manage their own feelings. Also, in an invalidating environment, often feelings and the handling of feelings are being modeled for us in a way that maybe isn't super effective. So when people grow up in a household where there's emotional violence or where there's physical violence or where feelings aren't spoken about or where somebody is maybe feeling judgment, like, why can't you be more like your sister? You cry too much. Those send messages to us as little people that there's something wrong with our feelings and we need to not display them. We're not in a safe environment where we can talk about them. So when we talk about Linehan's biosocial theory, her research shows, and just for part one of this lesson, we're just going to talk about the bio piece, the biological piece. So Marshall Linehan's research shows that some people experience things more intensely than others and are therefore more reactive to events that happen around them. They're simply more sensitive to their environments than other people are. Sometimes this is genetic, or sometimes this is just a product of early life experience or trauma. I always say the best example of this is if you walk into a preschool classroom, you can see that biologically every different child is at a different level of emotional resilience. If you're my daughter, you're running away to go play and she's not crying, she's not holding on to me. Other kids are crying for their parents. Some kids are holding the teacher's hands. Other kids could care less and they're playing by themselves. So you can really take a look around, and children are a great way to do that, and walking into a classroom is a wonderful way to do that, where you can really see that even at very young ages, everybody is modeling different levels of emotional resiliency in the environment that they're in. So the biological piece of the biosocial theory is not just about reacting more intensely to our environments. It's actually acknowledging that there are people that really, truly experience body and mind things more intensely than other people. So one of the ways that Linehan describes this, and she often talks in metaphors, but is about sort of having emotional skin, and that there are some people that have a very thick emotional skin and other people who are missing their emotional skin. So one of the examples she gives is, if you are standing there and a breeze comes by, you might not think anything of it, or you might think, oh wow, it's a little drafty. But if someone is standing next to me who doesn't have their top layer of skin because they have third-degree burns, that small draft might be incredibly painful to them. And they experience it more intensely, and they experience it more painfully than someone who doesn't have the injury that they have. So it's really important to understand that when people are emotionally dysregulated, they're not just reacting big and reacting badly. They're actually having a bigger, more intense experience than we are, which is valid. So one of the most important things that we try to teach when we're working with loved ones who are around loved ones that are emotionally dysregulated is we don't want to respond by being like, oh my God, what's the big deal? Just calm down. We need to remind ourselves that this person is experiencing something much more intensely than we are, and they're reacting, therefore, more intensely, which is a valid response if you're experiencing something more intensely. So emotional vulnerability, according to Dr. Linehan, is biological, and it's just simply how some people are born. If you are from a family with multiple children, you probably already know this. In my family, there were 3 of us, and all 3 of us are very different emotionally, even though we all grew up in the same household. So people who are more emotionally vulnerable are normally exhibiting a higher degree of sensitivity to their environment and to things around them. They are incredibly intuitive. They can detect very, very subtle emotional information in the environment that other people don't. When I'm working with my patients, I'm often amazed how many of them can come in and tell if something is wrong with me, or if I'm having a bad day, or maybe can tell if I'm a little irritated with something, or if I'm tired. They're just sort of on such high alert all the time, which again is born of trauma, that they are really, really intuitive and able to detect what is going on in their environment in a way that a lot of other people are not. They also experience their emotions much more often than other people do, meaning that emotions might go up and down more often, or they might experience sadness more often, but they experience emotions more often than other people do. And often it can seem to others that their emotions hit out of the blue. Like everything was fine one minute, and now, oh my gosh, this person is really upset with me, or this person is crying, or what have you. So oftentimes it can seem like people are incredibly labile or up and down, but what's really happening is that there's something biological going on inside of them that is causing their emotions to feel like that way. So it might be the environment, but a lot of it is genetic, and it's that they were born that way. The other thing about people who experience emotional vulnerability more strongly than others is that their emotions are more intense. And when I say that their emotions are more intense, what I mean is that their emotions hit fast and like a ton of bricks, and the emotions last longer than they might for other people. So imagine that, you might be sitting there and someone says something, and whatever they said just hurts you so badly, and it feels like you just got punched in the stomach. And what might happen after that is it might take 4 hours. It might take 2 days. It might take a week for you to stop thinking about it. So emotions hit fast and they hit big, and it takes much, much, much longer for people who are emotionally dysregulated, or people who are struggling with borderline personality disorder, to get back to a normal emotional baseline. So one thing I often hear when people ask me about just emotion dysregulation with the people that they care about is, why are these things such a big deal? Why do they get so upset? Why are they so angry? And it's like, well, because biologically they become really dysregulated by the chemicals that are being secreted by their brain, and they're actually feeling this anger or feeling this sadness in a much more intense way, because biologically this is how they're built. So that's a really important thing to understand, in my opinion, because we cannot control, to a certain extent, the way that we are born or our own biology. We are not able to just magically change our brain chemistry. any more than we are able to stop our own hearts from beating. So it's really important to remember that these are not actually choices when they're biological, when there's a biological component to them. The second part of the biological part of the biosocial theory relates to impulsivity. So impulsivity is when we have a really hard time regulating our reactions. And so when we see people who are emotionally dysregulated, in particular people who are living with borderline personality disorder, what we see a lot of the time is an inability to keep inside or control reactions in the moment. So people may act out in ways that others don't understand, and they may act out in ways that make things worse or that they later regret. Often people find it really hard to restrain their impulsive behaviors because they can't tolerate the intensity of the feelings. And so acting out in many different ways, whatever that target behavior is going to sort of release the intensity of that feeling and provide momentary relief. So they might often do things that might get them in trouble, whether that's at work or with other people or whatever environment they're in. And there are often times where this behavior might seem to come out of nowhere. So sometimes when I'm sitting with my patients and I say something and I get a very strong reaction, I sort of sometimes have to say, whoa, where did I just go wrong? What just happened between my lips and your ears? Because I just feel like, you got really upset with me, or I feel like I really hurt you somehow, and I want to understand why. And I think reacting in a way that's curious instead of judgmental is really key when you're dealing with emotion dysregulation or borderline personality disorder, because we always want to come from a non-judgmental stance and a place of understanding instead of a place of judgment. Because if we come from a place of judgment, what happens? People get defensive, and then things start escalating, right? So it's really important to remember that even if the behavior seems to come out of nowhere, or the behavior seems to be somewhat sideways, that it's important to be curious about why and understand what that person interpreted that's making it hard for them to restrain their behaviors. And the second part about impulsivity is that when somebody is incredibly activated, I don't use the word triggered because I think it's overused now, but when someone is feeling really dysregulated or incredibly activated, it's very, very hard to behave effectively. I think anyone that has been in a really bad fight with somebody knows this. When you are arguing with someone, or someone has done something that has really hurt you, that you're feeling incredibly intensely, it's very, very hard to remain effective or skillful. Moods can get in the way of organizing your thoughts and achieving your goals. In particular, anger, I think, gets in the way the most because, as we've talked about in other videos, prefrontal cortex turns off, amygdala fires, and we're off to the races. In these cases, many times, it's not that people won't or people are choosing not to. It's that they actually cannot control their behavior that is linked to their moods. So that's when we often see people engaging in emotion-driven behavior, whatever that is. And oftentimes, again, it's behavior that makes things worse. I think the most important thing, though, that I also want to say, because I always want to keep a dialectic going here, is that yes, these are some things that are negative, but emotional sensitivity also really has its benefits. People who experience emotions intensely, who experience anger or sadness or emotions that are not so comfortable intensely, also experience good emotions intensely. They love intensely, they are passionate, they're empathic, they feel connection very intensely. So it does have its benefits. It's just that when a person doesn't know how to take care of their sensitivity and understand biologically what's going on with them and isn't mindful of the changes happening around them and their environment, and then you combine that with a biological sensitivity to their environment, they often try to dull the pain in ways that inevitably actually makes the pain worse. So the behaviors have consequences. And what we try to do, not only in DBT, but I also come from a psychoanalytic background, and when I'm working with non-DBT clients and I'm working from a more depth-oriented lens, what we're trying to do is figure out, okay, these feelings that you have are valid, but where we start is with the biological and with the neuroscience. In order to understand what's happening, you have to first understand what's going on in your body. And that's why mindfulness is such a big component of DBT. Because if I'm mindful that I'm in an environment where I'm feeling misunderstood and I'm able to be mindful that my body is sending me cues that I am uncomfortable, that I am getting angry, that I feel like I might start crying, that I feel like I might start yelling, that I might say something I regret, then I think what it does is it gives me more control over how I respond. So that's the biological piece of the biosocial theory, according to Dr. Linehan. In our next video, we will get into the social piece, which is a lot more about the invalidating environments that I spoke about earlier. Again, please hit like or subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. We also have a TikTok, and our website is www.socaldbt.com. And please feel free to ask any questions in the comments. And I look forward to talking to you guys again tomorrow. Have a good night.